it's written by Anonymous, and it's the person says, "Hi, Mother Miriam. I thought this article might be of interest to you, related to women pushing for changes in the church at the Synod. There should be no women at the Synod. I would love it if you might be able to read this and offer your thoughts." The title is "Catholic Women Remain Hopeful in the Synod Despite Challenges." And it's from Vatican City, study by an International Association of Catholic Women's Organizations has found that a strong majority of women who attended last fall's meeting of the Synod on Synodality in Rome felt their concerns were heard at the gathering, but they also believe they are already being sidelined as the next meeting of the Synod approaches. Let me see what it says. The study, which surveyed more than 459 women involved at different levels of the Synod, found that 43% felt their voices were usually listened to, and another 24% said they felt they were always heard. A total of 69% of women said they were effectively involved in the decision-making process during the Synod. I tell you, no one should be involved in the Synod but bishops. No one. Not men who are not priests, not women. This is not just a distortion, but an abomination. It is a change of the church for 2,000 years. The article goes on. The survey was conducted by the World Women's Observatory, a project of the World Union of Catholic Women's Organizations, which aims to elevate women's status in society and in the church. The results of the study were sent to the Vatican for analysis and presented at a press conference on May 30th. Well, since I'm reading this with you, beloved, for the first time, I'm just going to comment through it. Women's status is not to be elevated. No one has a greater status than the Blessed Mother, Mary, Mother of God, Mother of the second person of the Blessed Trinity. No one has a greater status than Mary. And God has given women, in creating them, in giving them the vocation as mothers, as the foundation of the family. No one could have a greater vocation than that. There's no more power in the world than producing a human being, than co-creating with God a human being. Men don't have that power. Women don't need to be elevated. If they truly feel that they are degraded, all they need to do is come up to the vocation, the magnificent, glorious, holy vocation they were created to have as mothers and true women of the church. That's all they would need. By wanting to be equal with men and having the recognition and power of men, they're degrading themselves awfully, and they're ruining God's creation in them. The article goes on. The Synod on Synodality, called in 2021 by Pope Francis, invited Catholics around the world to gather in parishes and dioceses to talk openly about the issues facing the church. Bishops later discussed the results of those consultations at the national and continental level, setting the agenda for the Synod meeting in Rome last October. Among the most commonly cited concerns were female leadership and LGBTQ plus inclusion. I'm going to tell you, beloved, that is the devil's agenda. It is not of God. It's the devil's agenda. I personally believe that those in charge determined the agenda before these so-called listening sessions, that they could do what they want to destroy the church at the end of the Synod and simply proclaim it was the result of what the people of the church wanted. It's not true. The Synod also saw unprecedented inclusion of women who were allowed to attend the summit in Rome in October 2023. Such Synod meetings are historically open only to bishops, and should have been only to bishops. Despite the efforts, the article continues, to include women's voices, however, 67% of women who participated in the conference, the WWO study, the Women's Worldwide Organization study, said they encountered obstacles during the process. The study found that the Synod is marking a path of greater listening to women and the creation of new spaces within the church where they are participating in decision-making, but that many respondents underlined the importance that women be allowed to vote during the second meeting of the Synod in October 2024. As the process progresses, fewer and fewer women are involved and in leadership positions in the church, so their voice may be lost, wrote one respondent from North America in the report. Women were allowed to vote on the final report of the first Synod session in 2023, quote, a decision that is still hard to swallow for some in the church, said the Reverend Giacomo Costa, who works for the Vatican Synod office that coordinated the process at the press conference. Quote, I think it's very limiting to reduce participation to being able to vote, Costa said, adding that while the ability to vote is highly prized in Western societies, women have offered a contribution that is much more worthwhile than just simply pressing a button at the end of a process, which ultimately has a consulting function. In the end, the Pope will decide. Costa said that women who acted as facilitators of the Synod discussions were crucial in writing the report. That breaks my heart. It actually makes me ill. I'm letting you know, women who are listening to me, it makes me ill. Women should not be facilitating crucial discussions in the Synod report. Women should not be present whatsoever. So let me repeat that. He said women who acted as facilitators of the Synod discussions were crucial in writing the report that came out of the first Synod meeting, in which the discussions were summarized. He urged Catholics not to become polarized, men against women. It's not. It's women against men in this case. It's horrible. Another area of tension for many women, it is men against women if they include women in the Synod. You are destroying the vocation of women and of your vocation. Another area of tension for many women, especially in North America and in Europe, is the question of allowing women to be ordained as deacons. That is diabolical. Clergy who may preach the gospel and perform some of the sacraments. It's diabolical, beloved. I know it's happening, but it's diabolical. Catholic women should never be any part of the Synod. I'm sure a number of you listening will disagree, but nonetheless, the church is not to be run by women. The home is to be run by women. And men who think they're accommodating women by bringing them into the Synod are destroying the church and the family. I'm going to continue where we left off. Another area of tension for many women, especially in North America and in Europe, is the question of allowing women to be ordained as deacons, clergy who may preach the gospel and perform some of the sacraments. I said before the break, it is diabolical. Francis has created 2 commissions to study the possibility of women deacons, and more recently appointed a team of theologians and canon lawyers to present their findings during the Synod Assembly in October, but pushed off their written report to 2025. Women, particularly in North America and Europe, are demanding that they be allowed to preach in assemblies and that the positions of responsibility they already hold be better valued and publicized. It's completely diabolical. And men and priests and bishops and dear Holy Father, if you allow this, you are not only destroying the church, you are destroying the family. It was the worldwide women's organization that found that study, and the female diaconate appears strongly in these regions. But Pope Francis himself, pushed back against the possibility of female deacons during an interview with CBS's 60 Minutes on May 20th, answering with a definitive no, while suggesting that women take on greater responsibility in the church outside of ordained ministry. Well, that's a step in the right direction, but it's not the step the Synod is taking. Women who took part in the study said women's deacons would be a sign of hope for women Catholics. No, it wouldn't be. It would be a sign of destruction for women Catholics who feel that the church remains male-dominated. They also expressed a hope that women would be allowed to teach in seminaries, building relationships and interactions between women and seminarians, and that more women be trained to become theologians to better participate in the church. It's the women's organization, representing 8 million women in more than 50 countries, was founded in 1910 to promote the presence, participation, and shared responsibility of Catholic women in the world. This grieves my heart. Women need to go home and raise saints for the kingdom. I know many people are cursing me right now. Well, you're cursing God then, because that's the vocation he gave to women. It has permanent offices in the United Nations, the Food and Agriculture Organization, and Human Rights Council in Geneva. The WWO, the Women's Organization, is already preparing a new project in 78 countries to inform Catholics about the Synod, but especially female leadership in roles in the church. So far, over the past 2 months, they have invited 678 Catholics, mostly women, to discuss the Synod up to this point and how women's voices were represented. You know, I've said it all. It's demonic. It's not God's plan. Women are the heart of the home. They are given the greatest vocation in the world to raise saints for the kingdom. And they are degrading it. They're throwing it away. They want to be men. Men want to be women. A woman could never be a man, could never take a man's place. She could be a strong woman, even a strong leader, but she can't take a man's place any more than a man can take a woman's place. There's no such thing as a birthing person. Only women can give birth to children. If you create babies artificially, again, you are under Satan's control. It has nothing to do with God or truth. Absolutely nothing. We are using the mind, the brains, the intelligence God has given us to destroy his creation, to destroy the church, to destroy the earth. It is demonic. It is tremendously sad. And I beg parents to raise godly children. Live the faith at home so that none of your young daughters who have been homeschooled, I pray, who have been taught to dress modestly with long skirts, not tight clothing, not exposing themselves, can be modest and lovely and be future saints for the church.